Dear friends, today, well, first of all, let me just thank you all for commenting and asking questions on the video I posted on the Voice of Lancelot video. Very much appreciated. I think I'm going to do two follow-up videos on that. There'll be two. One of them is this, and the other one will be for people that are sort of on the cusp of designing one. And you've been asking questions, you're really trying to figure out what the design is all about and things to solve and get a handle on the design. So, and I'll address your videos in a different video, which will take a little bit of time because I'll just need to make sure it has a nice sequence and I've got everything so I can go through those questions that you asked. So this video is more for those of you that find it hard to get a handle of what this sound is and maybe compare to other speakers. And you know what, without experiences this type of speaker, it's hard to get a sort of a reference feel for where you can ground yourself in. And I've gone through that journey from box speaker to electrostat, back to dynamic, then to a combined hybrid ribbon with large format ribbon with omnidirectional woofer and near fields, and now this speaker. So it has been quite a journey, and really nothing of the previous speakers translate to the way the music is set in the room like this speaker. So, but maybe I thought, you know what, I did find a reviewer, Steve the Audiophiliac, who was reviewing a Ohm Walsh 1000 speaker, and he does a brilliant job in describing what that omnidirectional speaker is like. And then in later on in the clip, he talks about how he then went to his Klipsch heresies, and then he compares it to what it was doing with that. And so and it's quite nice because the Klipsch heresy actually has the type of drivers that the Voice of Lancelot has. So the best way I can describe it from you is to give you a reviewer that you might know how he reviews things, what his judgment is. He has heard tons of gears, and then sort of I think what you can add up is the comments that he says about the Ohm Walsh speaker, plus what he says about the heresy, and you just have to mentally sort of combine these two elements, and that's sort of a good starting point to saying what this speaker is doing. So what I'll do now is I'll play you that clip, and it will be sort of, I think, about 3 minutes for the first part and then a minute for the second part, and then I'll add some extra things about the design of the Voice of Lancelot that go in addition of what is happening here. So that's also for those people that want to know a little bit more about the minutiae, but it all contributes to the sound. So this is, I think, the best way of referring that to you, apart from the clips that are already posted, because I think that they'll quite let you know what these things do. Okay, here we go.
And I got to break it to you this way. Today's show is a bit of a magical mystery tour. A magical mystery tour of the Ohm Walsh 1000 tall speaker. Now this is an omnidirectional speaker. So, the speakers that you probably know best are box speakers with the drivers arrayed on the front baffle. You know, tweeter, mid-range woofer, that sort of thing. You've seen those, you've read the reviews, you've owned those. That's not what this is. And you maybe have a panel speaker like a Magnapan or an electrostatic speaker, right? No, still not the same thing. An omnidirectional speaker radiates sound more or less 360 degrees. That energizes the room, your room, in a completely different way than what you've heard before from speakers. That is a really big deal, a very big deal. Now, Ohm is not exactly the most high-profile company on the scene. It's not. But it's been around for well over 40 years. They design and build all of their speakers here in Brooklyn. And when I say design and build, I mean they make their own cabinets, they make their own drivers. It's all done there, and they're great craftsmen. Really beautiful stuff. Now, I reviewed the bigger brother to the 1000, the 2000, in 2019 here on the channel. And I love that speaker. I absolutely did. Except there was one catch. These speakers break a rule of audiophile speakers that all seem to need to be placed way out into the room to sound their best. 2 feet, 3 feet, 4 feet out into the room. Not these. Though they're omnidirectional speakers, they actually are designed to be placed near walls. 6 inches to 12 inches or 14 inches, that's where they sound best. And I couldn't do that when I reviewed the Ohm 2000 in 2019 because the way my room is arranged. Now that it's a different room, different space, I can. So I wanted to revisit Ohm, but not with the same speaker because I already did it. So I picked this one, the 1000. And it just, it was a mind-blowing experience the first time. It's still a mind-blowing experience because it's so different. It just puts sound in the room in a more, let's say, naturalistic, more realistic way than box speakers do. I'm talking about spatial, because that's what this speaker does so well. Imaging. I don't think that non-audiophile people, civilians, hear imaging at all. They're completely unaware of it coming out of speakers. It's just sound over there, right? But I think if you took a non-audiophile and plopped them down in the listening chair in front of these speakers, they would get it because it's that much more, realistic. It sounds more like real music in a room. And that's no small achievement, right? Now, this is going to be a longer than average review because...
So that's the first part. The second part is where he starts listening to music and he discovers a track that just suddenly came to life with this kind of speaker. And that has also been my experience. And then he goes into the clips. So that's about a minute time. I will watch that as well. And then I'll bind it all together and add some extra things, extra qualities that the voice of Lancelot also has. So here it goes.
Well, one of the first recordings I played was this one. It's an Eno album called The Drop. Now, I love Eno's music. I talk about it on many reviews. But this particular album, The Drop, is one of those that, I don't know, it's never really grabbed me. But this time, I'm playing it, and something about the spatial presentation just made it a different experience. And the bass, there's a lot of incredible bass on this recording. And the bass definition of this speaker is extraordinary. It gets the texture, it gets the body, and it's a skinny speaker with a 6.5-inch driver, but it still makes a surprising amount of bass. It truly does. But there's just something about the way the sound fills the room. It just comes out of the speaker and inhabits the room in ways that other speakers don't quite match. Now, I did play it quickly. I went over to the other side of the room and I played it on the Klipsch Horn 4s, much bigger speaker, 15-inch woofer. The bass was deeper. It was more dynamically alive, but it was so much more two-dimensional. The sound was so much flatter and stuck to the speakers more. Oh, another recording.
So that's Steve, the audiophiliac for you. Yeah, and I just feel that having listened, when Janos sort of presented this speaker, and I had no idea what he was talking about, but I sort of gleaned from a couple of people commenting that he was, he knew what I was talking about. I thought, I'll buy it, so I'll try it. And the two things that sprung out to me is A, the effect of high efficiency, and B, this type of cabinet. And the omnidirectional cabinet, this omnidirectional way of transmitting energy into the room. And if you really want to go into it, also the research that was done in 1956-57, which is a brilliant video from Janos on that, how they discovered the lacking things in audio reproduction, and they were very close back then. And Janos has also obviously put it in his design, but for your mental picture, if you add up what the Klipsch does, so that's because the Klipsch has the vol drivers, the voice of Lancelot drivers, type of drivers, high efficiency, large format woofer, large format compression driver, and you add it up with these qualities of the Ohm loudspeaker, that's when you have a voice of Lancelot. Now then, there's a couple of technical things that get added up to it. The voice of Lancelot is a large box. Mine is 170 liters, Janos has 230, so we're talking about a good volume that can do lower the lower bass regions very easily. Then what we do is we add a mesh loaded transmission line, so you get a nice loading on the woofer at the backside. Then what we do is we put a port in there and tune it really low. I would recommend between 18 to 23 hertz. 23 hertz if you need a bit more support and your room doesn't have it. You can actually brew a bit more, and then you boost the lower regions. You can also put it to 18 for the subsonic region, and that makes that, for example, a double bass, the 37 hertz tone, is completely free from the effects of the port, so you get the full textured experience of the bass. And don't forget, if you think about real instruments, so a double bass the lowest tone is 37 hertz, and it does that with a 1 meter body. And if you sort of divide the length of a 37 hertz tone, you will see that 1/8 of the body length is actually 1/8 of the wavelength. That's the length of the instrument. So with a mass loaded transmission line, 1/8 means that you can reproduce an 18 hertz tone about so in a 2 meter folded mass loaded transmission line. So then a couple of final pieces that go into the voice of Lancelot is the gradual transition of the bass reflex port to the outside. So if you've seen Janos's clip, he has a sort of a mini horn at the end of it, which slowly transitions the high pressure region to the low pressure region. And I think it just adds a little bit more efficiency to the bass reflex port, so it can out more energy and to effectively couple with the rest of your room. I mean, if you would imagine a standard bass reflex, you wouldn't get that. So, because it would just be punching a hole in the air, really, so a small port trying to move the rest of your room. It doesn't work. Plus, you get very high port speeds. So by transitioning it, you get a much better coupling. Then, if you take this all together, what on top of that you can do with this design, which is apart from design, is you can take the best drivers that have ever been produced. So you take high efficiency, all-Nico, good to vary, but drivers such as the 288, Altec 288, or you take the JBL equivalents. I think they'll work as well. You just have to look at the specs for that. But you take a very good 16-inch driver, and so when you put that together, you have the highest performing drivers that you can get your hands off, and then you put them in a cabinet that has all these benefits combined in a single design. Then the final bit is knowing, for example, that you're going to drive this with a tube amp. So what does that do? It means you can optimize the crossover and the drivers for that have the tube amp operate in their best possible region. And for tube amps, that means small signal gain, low power, and high impedance. And so what the option is, so most speakers that also need to be suitable for solid states, they need to have quite a constant, and lots of reviewers talk about this. The best sounding speakers are those with a flat impedance graph, because they'll make sure that no region sort of starts overshadowing the other region. So not everybody agrees on that, but when you have a tube amp, because they're far more like, they translate more, they're not voltage amplifiers as such. They more or less give a far more constant power outage. They don't halve their output when the impedance goes up twice. So you can actually optimize and just let the crossover regions run over in high impedance, and you can just have the natural, if you ever saw those impedance sweeps, you can just let those impedances sweep up as the frequencies get higher, and your tube amp will only do a better job on it. So that's the final thing, where you get the synergy of the type of drivers that you use with tube amps, and they're just ideally matched to each other, because you only need like half a watt to play most music. My speaker and the crossover, they run up to 100 ohms easily in several places. So so yeah, those are all those things that make that you know, if you want to construct a mental concept, it is taking these two things and then just adding up a couple of things, and then you sort of end up with what I think the voice of Lancelot does. And that doesn't mean that other speakers do other isolated elements better. I'm sure they do. There's no doubt about it. But in sense of putting a natural type instrument in the room that, like an instrument, like a guitar, like any acoustic instrument, will just broadcast 360. And that's what this speaker largely does. And it gives the same energy. It activates the room in the same energy. You don't get the resonances in your room so much. You don't get these... Yeah, the effect is unlike anything I've heard. It is far more gentler. And yeah, you still need to do some carpet and so on in your room, but it's relatively minor. So I hope that description gave you a bit more insight. It also is a couple more details on the design itself and what makes it so special. And yeah, I hope that helped out a bit. Thank you for watching, and I wish you a brilliant day, and until the next video, bye bye.